No stairway. Denied.
You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
You know, we all have different days of the week that are our favorite days. My favorite days of the week in order are Monday and Friday. Those are my favorite days. Monday's first, Friday's second. John is a Wednesday lover, right, John?
Yeah, I'm a hump day type of guy. I do love Fridays and Mondays, though, Brad. There's really no – and, you know, I consider Thursday to be like Friday Junior. So I love Thursdays, too, you know.
But there's
every day on this side of the grass is a good one, Brad.
But there's a special reason why John likes Wednesdays.
Ooh, let me think. Why is that, Brad?
John does the tortured politicians thing. Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah, we did that for all the governor candidates. That series ended last Wednesday. You're right.
It ended?
Yeah, Brad, there's 4 candidates for governor. We talked last Wednesday about how last Wednesday was the last the last one of that series. We talked about it on the show Wednesday.
We're not doing any more tortured?
No, that was a thing for the governor candidates, Brad.
John, you know, this has already been
you should listen to our show. It's a great show. You can find it at bjshow.video, according to Brad Hildebrand.
This has been a very frustrating week for me because
you've had a lot on your mind. You've had a lot going on, Brad. You can't keep track of 100 different balls in the air.
Well, listen to this. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
I don't know if you've noticed it. I have 2 hearing aids. I'm very deaf. I'm not understanding.
Well, make my day, pal. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
I put that thing together. We're not doing it anymore?
Yeah, that was the thing. We talked about how we were doing it for the governor's race, Brad. And folks can go to our YouTube page, and there's a special playlist for the Tortured Politicians Department, and you can find all the videos there.
John, you're ruining my day.
Well, you know what, Brad? I mentioned last week, too, when we talked about how last Wednesday was the last edition of the Tortured Politicians Department. We talked about how I have a new setup and a new game to play, and maybe we could debut that on Friday, Brad.
I pulled in the St. Louis String Quartet, had to pay them, had to buy them lunch and dinner. I brought in that operatic singer who, by the way, teaches voice lessons out at Lindenwood University. And then I brought in Comer and Biden into the studio to record that. It took me hours. Studio time was $100 an hour. I had to pay each of the musicians, even though they really only performed for 20 minutes. I had to pay them a whole day. They had per diems, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, my goodness. You know, that's a good reason to check out the scope of work before you begin a project. And, Brad, scope of work and commentary from experts leads very well into our number 3 story today.
Oh, he must be talking about the fact that John Combest, the guy you're hearing right now, Combest, has this site called johncombest.com. Every single day, 24 days out of, or no, 24, not 24 days, every single day, 365, and this year, 366, he puts together a list of what he deems to be the top stories in the state of Missouri, politics, government, all that kind of good stuff. And normally it's 20, 30, sometimes 40 and 50 different things. Sometimes it can be very lengthy. Sometimes he's got so much stuff that he has to buy extra space on the server to essentially put this stuff on there. But on our show, he distills all that down to the top 3, and we bring in a very important guy, and he starts it off by saying things like,
"Now and here they are."
He doesn't. He speaks out both sides of his mouth. Hold on a minute.
He's in stereo.
And here they are. Now on with the countdown. We're on our way to the number 1. And here they are. Now on with the countdown. In 3rd place.
There we go.
Some great news for folks in Wright City, for folks in Warren County, for folks in St. Charles County. A new beef processing facility is coming in, Brad. The company is funding an $800 million facility south of Interstate 70 in Warren County. It will employ, expected to be about 1,300 workers, and they will process a whole lot of cows there, Brad. And as you might expect, a handful of people, it appears, are not happy about it. In fact, the Post-Dispatch covered this today. The content creator known as Kurt Erickson he says that some residents aren't very happy. And he cites an email from a woman he got from Lake St. Louis who says that, hey, folks go skiing at Lake St. Louis. Our local water ski team puts on a show there. I don't think we should have a beef processing facility here. Now, the company, for their part, Brad, is not only building a brand new sewage treatment facility, but they're also investing in a bunch of agriculture that can be used. I said agriculture, investing in a bunch of infrastructure that can be used by local businesses, local housing developments. So they're investing a lot of money in infrastructure, not just for their own sewer plant, but for the area. The reason why this is timely is that the Missouri Department of Natural Resources has a public comment period going on. That public comment period ends next Friday, May 31st. And in fact, there will be an in-person conversation about this development next Thursday at the Wright City Lions Club. And I would expect folks from the company would be there, folks from Missouri DNR would be there to hear comments from the public about this sewage treatment, and more importantly, I think, about the beef processing facility and what it could mean for the community.
Okay, John, I'm missing something. I saw this story yesterday and thought to myself, okay, I know where Lake St. Louis is. I know approximately where this new beef plant they want to put in is. Isn't there like 12 miles between those 2 points?
At least 9 miles. I believe the Post-Dispatch piece says there's 9 miles, but there is a creek, Brad. So ostensibly, I guess, according to, if you believe that companies don't design things well, I guess you could believe that water from a sewage plant could go down, from a beef processing facility sewage plant could go 9 miles to the east into Lake St. Louis. I think that's what the theory is.
But I know, is there a creek that enters into?
Yeah, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it looks like Peruque Creek. Yeah. Peruque.
There's years ago, we've talked about this one time before. There's a term called NIMBY, not in my backyard. And what I find sort of fascinating is, and matter of fact, if there's any Cottleville people listening who are on the Cottleville Facebook forum, which has turned into like this chaotic, crazy Facebook page. Once upon a time, Cottleville had I think my next door neighbor, our ex-next door neighbor used to live in Cottleville, and he told me that when he was born, there were 90 people that lived in Cottleville. I think Cottleville is up to, matter of fact, I'll look at it as you give me number 2, and we'll come back to this in a couple of minutes. But I think Cottleville is way over 7,000 people. If you've driven along 364 in the floodplain down there from west of essentially before you get to Highway K, if you know what I'm talking about, anybody's driven 364 in the last couple years, they brought a huge portion of the floodplain from essentially Darden Creek out of the floodplain with fill, and they're plunking down houses. I mean, to the point where I drive by there on a Monday and there's 2 houses. I drive by there on Tuesday, there's 4 houses. I mean, it's like their rabbit, reproduction rate out there. I mean, so in other words, what's happening is Cottleville is exploding, okay? So what's happened is the people who bought a house there 3 years ago are upset about the people who are now buying a house now. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying.
So in other words,
not only is not in my backyard about things like landfills, but it's about development. You want to look out your backyard and not see a neighbor.
Right, which once again, unless you go out into the boonies, that's not going to happen. So when I saw this story, I'm going like, okay, there's 9. Well, what did you say? Officially, the Post-Dispatch say 9 miles?
9 miles, yeah. And sorry to interrupt, Brad, but also it's made clear here, too. It says the facility will release the water that's been treated at the plant into a tributary of Peruque Creek, which eventually feeds Lake St. Louis 9 miles away.
Man, I don't know. I mean, think about what feeds, nowadays, anytime you have any kind of a lake, matter of fact, if you've seen this, you're a St. Louis County guy, do you have the stickers on your sewers in your neighborhood that they stick on the sticker?
That say this feeds a stream, like don't put your paint down here.
Right. Well, but the part of that is that as people drive around in their cars, there's oil that leaks, there's antifreeze that leaks, there's little shavings from your tires that rub off because that's how your tires wear down. There's little tiny shavings of your brake pads that wear as you apply the brakes. All that stuff ends up in the streets. The rain comes. It goes into, it washes it into the sewer system. The sewer system enters into the creek system, right? I mean, there's already gunk in the creek already, right?
That's true. And I just think on the broader issue, though, Brad, and you could accuse me of being Johnny Corporate here, but every time I see news like this of a company coming in, employing people, wanting to build and make a huge capital investment in an area, and then you have a handful of people, or maybe two handfuls of people, or maybe three, who are upset because they don't want something like this coming, and a lot of those concerns are valid. That's not to say that people shouldn't be concerned about water quality. But when you think of the vetting process that the various agencies go through to allow these companies to set up their manufacturing and set up their capital investment here, it's just the critics get a disproportionately high amount of media coverage. And I feel for the companies that are coming in and trying to not just make a buck, but actually help the local community.
Well, probably the classic example was AOC with Amazon wanting to put another headquarters in New York City in her district, and she fought it left and right.
Yeah.
And it was going to bring in all these high-paying jobs, and they're going to renovate a bunch of buildings and stuff like that. And now people are going like, okay, was that a good decision on her part or not? Well,
hey, at least AOC doesn't have fake eyelashes, or she doesn't have a bleached blonde, bad-built butch body.
Or she doesn't have an exercise video, right? She has,
oh, yeah.
has none of those.
And you doubted me, Brad, when I told you that Marjorie Taylor Greene had a workout video, and now she's posted new ones.
Well, John, that was one of those things where you told me that she had a workout video. And I also heard that Joe Biden was a founding member of the Mensa organization. I thought to myself, now hold on a minute, that can't be right. Okay, moving along.
You thought I had her confused with Suzanne Summers. Let's roll.
Yes, Suzanne Summers, who actually is a very intelligent woman, but unfortunately she got typecast because she was the dumb blonde. And what was that? Three's Company? What was that show? One of those things. Okay.
I'm not listening. I'm looking at her thighs, bro. Go ahead.
The Thigh Master, right?
Up a notch to number 2.
Here's Thigh Master. Number 2.
She may be weary. And young girls, they do get wearied. Wearing that same old shaggy dress. No, it's not Otis Redding. It's the St. Charles County Library, Brad. There's a big lawsuit going on out there. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, matter of fact, you know who we should call and talk to about this? We should talk to Shelley, because she lives right around the corner from the one branch they want to close.
On Elm Street?
On Kisker.
Oh, okay. This particular controversy happens out at the location out off of Elm Road. It's called the I don't have the name of the exact library in front of me. But anyway, there's a gentleman out there. You may recall the controversy from last summer, Brad, who wore a dress to work because the dress code is business casual.
Yeah.
And he's got a beard and he wears a dress. And some people didn't like that. And they thought that he should not be doing his cross-dressing gimmick at work. And so that gentleman, whose name is Danny Roberson, or Robertson, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, is suing an outspoken library critic. By the way, the story is brought to us by the Post-Dispatch. A progressive gentleman named Ethan Colbert produced the story. And the outspoken library critic is being sued, as well as the Maryland Heights Church, where she belongs. And she's being sued by this gentleman because he says that in a lot of, like on their websites and social media sites, that her and her friends have put him in danger because they say that, he says that she is suggesting that he's some sort of a groomer, that he's targeting children, and that she's generally just engaged in anti-transgender activities. He says that all of this this controversy has caused him a loss of sleep, mental anguish, and also anxiety. And now none of the defendants had anything to say to this progressive Post-Dispatch reporter about the story. But, this was a really hot topic last year, and this was coming of age, so to speak, during the period of time where there were a lot of controversies nationwide about appropriate and inappropriate books. So it seems like, Brad, it's kind of unfair for people to say that just because this guy's a cross-dresser and dresses up at the office or at his workplace that he's some sort of a groomer. And we'll see what he gets out of this whole thing, or we'll see if the church and this lady have to settle.
Well, two things. First off, I thought you were going about the library closing story because do you know about this story?
Yeah, I've seen the headlines. I haven't read them.
They're talking about closing 3 libraries in the St. Charles County Library District. Second thing is, what's he suing for? Is he suing for defamation or what?
Yeah. He's suing for the fact that for defamation and invasion of privacy.
Interesting.
Because he says that, these the suggestion, and he also says that they were exaggerating the female items he was wearing. He says that because he dresses in drag, that doesn't mean he's a drag queen. I guess they use the phrase drag queen to describe him on social media sites. So we'll see if he can get any cash out of this.
See, but, once again, I don't, and this is not, we're talking about apples and oranges here, but once again, libraries have been the focal point of a lot of the drag queen story hours. You know what I'm talking about?
I do know, yeah.
Where typically, you have this a lot of libraries where on the weekends or, they bring in someone who reads like Peter Rabbit or something to the kids, and it's usually like an actor or somebody like that who does a really good job, very animated and stuff like that. And remember, we talked about the fact that, okay, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, explain to me, and nobody's been able to explain this to me, and John, you're one of the smartest guys I know. Why is it this crazy, weird, new fascination with drag queens? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with pop culture, and it has to do with the fact that whether it's RuPaul's reality shows, and it's just the fact that the folks who are running mainstream media networks and streaming services love the idea of putting gays or cross-dressers or LGBTQIA or whatever into the mainstream because they can applaud each other, they can call each other brave and heroic. And, if you were to – I've never watched one of the RuPaul shows, but I imagine that a drag queen show, everybody's campy and funny and there's a lot of finger snapping and neck rolling and and a lot of wacky punchlines. And, that's entertaining. There's a certain element of society that finds that to be funny.
But there's a certain element of society who would find Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, and I know he's no longer with us, Roddy Piper,
yes,
who would be in. And once again, I would want these guys to show up at a library and read books to kids in their wrestling garb. They're short, they're tight.
That's right.
Tights, and there's some of them, wear the different kind of things. And if you did that, people would go bananas. Well, you can't do that. Why would you have those wrestlers? They're terrible people. But isn't like that the reciprocal or the opposite of like the drag queen type of thing? You know what I mean?
It absolutely is. But in fact, Brad, if there's one thing we know, it's that you can't have a group of strong men together in one place at one time. And in fact, that leads into story number 1.
Wow. And we don't plan this, but it sure happened this way.
The number 1.
Numero uno.
Senator Eric Schmitt was on the Ingram Angle on Fox News last night. Senator Schmitt went to New York, went to Manhattan to be there in a show of solidarity for President Donald Trump. Eric Schmitt and a number of other Republican lawmakers from across the country were there to observe what happened in the courtroom. Brad, can you see if you can repeat this phrase after me? Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Soviet-style show trial.
Soviet-style show trial.
That's it. Now, I can't say it 3 times fast or else I would try. But Senator Schmitt on Laura Ingram's show used the phrase Soviet-style show trial. That's what he says this is all about. Now, as you might expect, Brad, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch is not happy about the fact that a bunch of Republicans went to New York. And their lead editorial today is about the fact that Eric Schmitt and other Republicans went to New York to bend at the knee for Donald Trump. And of course, they're not going to like a bunch of people showing solidarity with the president. Uniquely, Brad, I will point out that even the Post-Dispatch points out that the prosecution's case in New York is pretty flimsy.
Well,
but, it doesn't matter because Donald Trump did these things anyway, and Republicans should be ashamed. Go ahead, Brad.
Flimsy is probably an understatement, especially.
Yeah, I mean, from what I gather, it seems to be the flimsiest of the however many cases, 4 cases that Trump has going on simultaneously.
Especially after the bombshell allegations that came out Monday, where Michael Cohen admitted he stole tens of thousands of dollars.
Hey, trust me, I'm a liar.
Right. He stole tens of thousands of dollars from the Trump organization. And I'm going like, okay. Now, it's interesting. I heard this talked about last night on one of the roundtable shows I was listening to. And the question was, and it was a great question. They had an attorney, and the attorney was talking about this. And they go, well, can the Trump organization sue him for theft? And you know what the interesting answer was?
What's that?
No, because of the statute of limitations. But what's interesting about that is that didn't stop New York from suing Trump because this happened 2016, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm going like, okay, now hold on a minute. Explain to me how the statute of limitation works one way, but not the other way. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just different rules for different people, Brad. And the bottom line is it's a Soviet-style show trial.
And it's pretty bad. You know that it's not a very good case when even the CNN people, even Jake Tappers of the world are saying like, we don't know about this.
Yeah. It's a bit of a stretch.
Matter of fact, you're not into gambling, are you? Are you into gambling?
I'm not. No.
Okay. There's this, I can't remember what it's called. There's a term for it where you can bet on practically.
A prop bet. It's called a prop bet.
A prop bet. Okay. A prop bet. Okay. And
it's short for proposition.
Right. And there's some organization that handles the prop bet. I read this over the weekend or maybe Monday, that when the trial started, the prop betting was essentially 95% of the people said that Trump is going to get convicted with this trial. So now, if you were to place a bet now, it's even odds. So what does that tell you? That even the betting community is going like, I don't think Trump's going to get nailed on this one. Because at even odds, if it's 50-50, isn't that one where what do they call that? I'm not a betting guy. Isn't that like a push?
It's called a push. And the point of casinos is they try to get the exactly 50% of people on either side of the bet because that manages their downside of
right.
It manages their downside risk.
Right. Essentially, people put in $100 million, they pay out $100 million, they're even, so they're not losing money on the deal. And obviously, the bettors are all hoping that they can outfox the casinos or the betting parlors, whatever, are soon to be, local emporiums, which will be, matter of fact, I don't know if you heard this or not, but what they're doing is, whereas with the marijuana places had to be at least 1,000 feet from the schools and churches and stuff like that. Well, I don't know if you see this, but in the Winning for Education, what they're going to do is to help the schools and things like that. The schools are going to be allowed to rent one of the classrooms at various high schools and public schools and middle schools to the betting people, and the kids can come in there in their lunch hour and place bets. Did you know this?
Ooh, I like that. And on the sidelines at a football game, instead of the booster club selling T-shirts and hot dogs, you can just place your bet on whether Johnny's going to score 3 touchdowns or 2.
Right. And if Jimmy hits that field goal, that kind of thing.
Come on, kid. You better make this.
Yeah, I got $20 on you. Put it between the crossbars. Okay. The upright. Excuse me. I got the wrong sport there. Okay. We have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?